Welcome back to another episode of Wine and Design. We are on part 3 of our, how to figure out what type of wine cellar. I don't think I even framed it as that before, but how to figure out what type of wine cellar you are or need. I'm Jacob Harkins. We are here in Denver, Colorado at our headquarters, joined by Dave Elliott, our VP of Innovation and Design, and just all-around wine cellar building, cooling, something expert with more experience than I have drinking.
So, I don't know about that, but we'll see.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So episode 1, we covered the basics of who we are, right? You are the Tuesday night pizza wine drinker,
right.
And we made you drink 2-Buck Chuck for that privilege.
I appreciated it.
We called myself the bougie wine drinker, and we have this Justin Cabernet, the 2006 from Paso, really awesome, I should say up-and-coming wine region, but really well-defined, well-known wine region now. Episode 2, we talked about how to build a passive wine cellar to hold your 2-Buck Chuck / $10 bottle of wine.
Right.
And now we're here to talk about this, this Justin wine that we have. How do we want to age this, or nicer wines, Barolos, etc.
Right.
How are we going to build an active wine cellar? So I will give you some wine that actually tastes good.
All wine should taste good. Cheers.
It doesn't, though. So,
that is better.
In joking about me being the bougie one, what we're really talking about is I collect vintage Barolos, Bordeaux. I want to keep them safe. So I need an active wine cellar. An active simply means we're investing in cooling systems.
Right.
So what are the 2 or 3 most important things that you recommend people think about when they're going into an active scenario?
So location is going to be important. A lot of the cooling systems out there have restrictions on how far they can be from their condenser or their evaporator. So you need to know that if you're in the northeast corner of your house, that you're not planning on putting the condenser on the southwest corner because you're trying to go a really long distance, and the systems just aren't going to work properly that way.
Yeah, and one of the things sorry to cut you off. One of the things I tell people, there's a cooling solution for just about any complex problem you throw out there, as long as you plan for it.
Absolutely.
So you need to make sure you can, when you talk about distances, he's talking about ducting and line sets and all that stuff. When we talk about a big trend is glass wine cellars. They're beautiful, gorgeous. Some of them are single pane, double pane, triple pane.
Correct.
So, but how do you accommodate the cooling? Because no matter what you do with glass, it doesn't have as much insulation value as
it has
a
very
wall.
little. It has very little, actually.
Just about nothing.
So what you're going to want to do there is anybody that's selling you a cooling system, they're going to run a heat loss for you if they know what they're doing and worth their value. Most of the companies that manufacture the systems out there, of course, worth their value and will run this for you. It is going to take into account whether you have glass and how thick it is, and if it's double, single, triple paned, how many doors you have.
Yeah.
If you do have a window out to the outside or not, how thick the walls are.
Yeah.
What they're made of.
Yeah.
What your insulation is and all that. So. And
there's so many different. There's systems that look like an AC unit that you put in your window that a handyman can put in. But most of these systems we're talking about require an HVAC licensed technician to install them. And one of the things, and I think you'll agree with me on this, you should always ask your HVAC guy if they understand the difference between an air conditioning unit and a wine cooling unit. If they say, no, I got this, I do air conditioning all day long, don't hire that person.
That's correct. A lot of people are confused. A wine cellar system is kind of in between a refrigeration system and a air conditioning system. There are a lot of things that have to be tweaked to get you to that certain temperature. So you want to make sure that somebody has both of those experiences, refrigeration and air, so that way they can have a full understanding of how these systems work. And yes, it would help if they have probably done it before, just so they know what they're looking for.
Yeah, and the other piece of advice I give people, if you're in Atlanta, hire someone who's built cooling systems in Atlanta.
Correct.
You have heat, humidity, etc. If you're in Minnesota, hire someone who's dealt with the negative whatever the heck it gets to in Minnesota. But the cold, these things, when you're putting systems in, they all factor into how you're doing it. We know people that rock it in South Florida because they know what tropical living is like.
Right. It's called a differential, and it's basically every cooling system operates on a certain level, and if you get past that level, it does start to not operate properly. It stops you from getting to the temperature you want to get to.
Absolutely. And for those of you who don't know why we do all this, wine is good wine is meant to be aged.
Yes.
And not all wine is good wine meant to be aged, but the reason cooling helps, the lower the temperature, and an ideal temperature is in that kind of mid-50s range,
Right.
It kind of mellows it out and lets it age a little bit slower. The humidity is very important because on these long-term aging wines, you don't want the cork to dry out to lead to extra oxidation and all that stuff. Wine just likes to mellow out and
Right.
chill, right?
Kind of like us.
Yeah, well, at least some of us. So these are really important factors to consider. And people have to understand when they're doing this, right, they're probably people who are investing money in wine, right?
A lot of money.
$50 bottles,
Yeah.
$100 bottles, $250 bottles,
Right.
which means the cellar is going to cost a little bit more to do than if you're putting that $2 chalk back up on.
That is correct. I mean, if you're trying to store a $60 bottle of wine, you're going to want to invest in it, especially if you have several bottles of it or several bottles of several $60 bottles. So you're going to want to spend that money to make sure it's safe and that it's aging properly, because there is a lot of value in wine as well.
Absolutely. And there's nothing better than just that perfectly aged bottle. You pull it out of the cellar and you're happy. You've spent the money on the cellar. You spent the money on the wine.
You better enjoy it.
Invite your friends over, and life is really good. And we're about to wrap this up, but I did want to. I get this question asked all the time. Well, serving temperature and cooling temperatures are different things, and just
Correct.
remember that the cellar is meant to have your red wines a little cooler than you're going to drink them at, and your white wines a little warmer than you're going to drink
Correct,
them at.
because they're aging.
Yes. If you want serving temperature, buy a wine fridge. If you want storing temperature, build a wine cellar.
Correct.
So with that, I know we tasted some $2 chuck earlier, and now I'm hoping that we've maybe won you over to the long-term nice wine cellars.
I'm on my way to being bougie.
So cheers. Thanks so much for joining us again.